Good afternoon and thank you for joining our presentation today. I'd like to introduce our team, which includes Mercedes Maldonado, Charlie Kilroy and myself. Today we'll be discussing the topic of cancel culture, in particularly addressing the history behind it, how it relates to current events and the ethical framework that surrounds the concept. Cancel culture can be described as an overdue reckoning for the powerful people of our society by being trialled in the court of public opinion. Recently, this idea of cancel culture has been more prevalent than ever. Huge names such as Ellen DeGeneres and Shane Dawson are being cancelled for their past activities that have recently come to light, ultimately ending their careers. However, some people would argue that cancel culture is not real because so many people have successfully recovered from being cancelled. This short video gives a brief background on cancel culture and how it works in our society today.
Cancel culture. Is it the bane of our modern existence? An overdue reckoning for the powerful PC hysteria-driven mob rule? Or does it not even exist?
We're giving people their careers the death penalty by public, kicking them out forever and saying we never want you back, right?
Are we? Because I've canceled the NFL since Colin Kaepernick.
And what if they're wrong?
And they're
you know what I mean? What if
strong.
To cancel is essentially to culturally boycott.
James Charles loses nearly 2 million YouTube subscribers in less than 2 days.
As Ligaya Michon writes for the New York Times, cancel is a consumerist verb, and this modern idea of to cancel is a capitalist form of protest, using your social media voice and/or your wallet to deplatform a problematic creator by no longer supporting their career.
Gina Carano will not be returning to The Mandalorian or the Star Wars galaxy amid backlash from a social media post the actress shared.
There's nothing new about public shaming, but today's version of canceling is remarkable for the speed with which social media can suddenly upend a person's reputation. Some argue it's sinister, eliminating nuance from debates and destroying ordinary people who may have made one minor transgression.
If you do anything wrong in your life, and I find out about it, I'm going to try to take everything away from you.
Others say it's an important warning to the powerful elite that they will be held accountable for their actions.
Journalist Heather Unro's tweet about Kevin Spacey last month triggered all the allegations against him, and the police are now investigating.
Most confusingly, while some paint cancel culture as an out-of-control moral panic terrorizing our society, others say there is no such thing, and that for the most part when people are canceled, nothing lasting really happens to them.
If you look at folks like Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, they have still worked despite huge accusations. So in due time, maybe he is able to come back.
As you can tell from the video, and I'm sure with your experience on social media today, cancel culture is growing and it is affecting some of the most powerful people in the world by letting the public determine their success. The first use of the word cancelled was in a film New Jack City in 1991, where one of the characters announced that someone was cancelled from society. The next known use of the word was in Lil Wayne's 2009 hit, I'm Single. However, the term became popularized in 2014 when it was used in the show Love and Hip Hop New York, which then saw it used in tweets and throughout meme culture. Since then, this has intensified a new set of moral attitudes and political commitments that tend to weaken our norms of open debate and toleration of differences in favor of ideological conformity. Some people see this as a threat to art and being our true selves because now everyone is too afraid to speak their own mind and feels the need to conform to a certain politically correct agenda. Although cancel culture can be very judgmental to someone's career, in these times it is important to understand that this type of behaviour was happening long before 2014. For example, the Scarlet Letter, where Hester Prynne was shunned from society for having a child out of wedlock and forced to wear the letter A on her clothing to show her sins and isolate her from the rest of society. Nowadays, celebrities might just get a slap on the wrist and within a few months be back doing their normal routine. However, some cases can be more severe than others. It is also important to understand that these celebrities who attempt to come back from these cancellations are so often just puppets being controlled by PR teams. This is portrayed in Amazon's hit new series, The Boys, when Chase Crawford's character, The Deep, is fed a script for his apology video and made to do countless acts of good. The question then remains, is it valuable to hold people of power accountable, or is it detrimental to artwork because it will only display a one-dimensional moral message? Charlie will now dive deeper into the cancelling of Shane Dawson.
All right, thank you, Keely. So Shane Dawson was a man that was once known as the king of YouTube. Now, Shane started YouTube in 2008. For the first 4 years, it went really well for him. He became one of the most respected creators on the platform, very well known, made a lot of money. And in 2012, he'll start talking about the racial themes behind Shane's content, and that was very problematic and offensive to a lot of people. Now, unfortunately, this kind of went away until 2018, when people started talking about the past comments Shane made and how they were really divisive and offensive towards a lot of people. Now, Shane did make an apology video and got out from under this scandal, but it resurfaced around 2 years later in 2020, when Shane made a video called Taking Accountability. Now, in this video, Shane made a bunch of statements regarding past content that he made, bad decisions that he made, and tried to make an apology for it that eventually came off as relatively insincere and was taken that way by the public, seeing as Taking Accountability was the last YouTube video that Shane Dawson has made to date. And to make matters worse, and the consequences worse for Shane Dawson regarding his actions, all of Shane's platforms on YouTube have been demonetized, including his past videos. So Shane is no longer making any money off of YouTube. So Shane's problematic content. On the left, here's some examples. On the left, you can see Shane Dawson, a photo of him in blackface, in a video that he posted to YouTube. And on the right, we can see a tweet that references a video of Shane Dawson pretending to masturbate in front of a cardboard cutout of an 11-year-old Willow Smith, while also singing along to a song that she had just released. So Shane addressed these kind of, and he talked about them a little bit, so I'm gonna go over that now. Regarding blackface, Shane said, I didn't actually look into the history of it, and I didn't understand why it made people so upset, which is hard to believe because a bunch of people were addressing this with Shane, trying to tell him why it was so offensive and why it alienated so many people. And then regarding Shane Dawson and his comments that were centered around pedophilia and children, Shane said, I would never ever talk about a child that way. However, this was directly countered by the video with Willow Smith, the Willow Smith video, along with a bunch of clips from Shane Dawson's podcast where he made jokes about pedophilia and a lot of things that were just really not okay, especially in the eye of the public. And then the nail in the coffin was really when a rip of Shane's podcast came out where he did a segment about fantasy murders, and Shane described how he would murder a criticism of his that had been active since 2012 and tried to teach him about what he should and shouldn't do on social media. Now, how does this relate to business ethics? I think the first and foremost lesson that we have to take away from this is that your past actions have weight. For Shane, his past actions had weight in the medium of he can no longer make content, he can no longer make money through this avenue. But for business professionals, they have to be extremely cognizant about what they put out on social media. And furthermore, they have to be very cognizant about how they treat people and their impressions of them and how people in their company, people in their firms see them. Because an impression that you make, especially a bad one, is going to last for a really long, long time. Now, moving on to the concept of social contract and the consequences of violating a social contract. Shane violated a social contract in almost every way. He made people feel uncomfortable. He discriminated against them in almost every way imaginable on his channel. Now, the consequences for that as a business professional are much the same. You lose your job, you put at risk everything you've worked for. And you can't violate a social contract as a business person. You have to learn from these mistakes that Shane has made, or you'll face much of the same treatment. It'll probably be a lot harder for you to make a living in life. And then moving on to a lack of real trust that we can see in Shane Dawson's community. Shane never established any type of give and take between his community and him. Through his exclusion and his audience allowing that exclusion, there was no real trust or order in Shane Dawson's community. And that was one of the things that led to his downfall. And as a business professional, you have to be very cognizant of making people alienated. You can't do it, especially in a professional setting. So now I'm going to pass it off to Mercedes to talk a little bit more about cancel culture in depth and give another angle.
Thanks, Charlie. Now I'm going to talk about Ellen DeGeneres, otherwise known as the Be Kind Lady. Ellen started her career in the 1980s as a stand-up comedian, and by the 1990s she was acting in film and TV. She acted in comedies and sitcoms, and my favorite was Finding Nemo. In 2003, she started her own TV talk show called The Ellen DeGeneres Show. The show ran for 18 seasons, and over that time, she was generally well-liked by the public. She began being called the Be Kind Lady because her show preached being kind and general positivity to everyone you meet. In 2020, there were allegations of a toxic workplace environment at the filming of her show. And in 2021, she announced that she would be ending the show and that it would be having its final season. On this slide, we have some quotes from her former employees. Her former employees chose to remain anonymous because they feared backlash from the film community. They were afraid that if they came out against Ellen with their real names, they would never be able to find a job in Hollywood. I would like to draw your attention to the second quote on the slide. It says, "I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to the show's brand." This quote is right next to a promo for Ellen's show that says, "Be kind to one another." This just shows how Ellen was preaching to be kind and nice to everybody, but then behind the scenes during filming, people felt like they were being discriminated against and there was just not a kind atmosphere whatsoever. On the top of the slide, it says if she wants to have her own show and have her name on the show title, she needs to be more involved and see what's going on. This is in regards to the fact that it wasn't necessarily Ellen who was being mean to employees, but her producers. Her producers were creating a toxic work environment and oftentimes participating in that environment. Even though it's not technically Ellen's doing, a lot of people felt that it was her show and that she should have been aware of what was going on, or at least noticed it. And then once she noticed it, she should have done something to stop and prevent it from happening again. On this slide, we can see Ellen's apology. Now, all three of those producers were fired, but Ellen still faced massive backlash from the public because it was her show. Ellen decided to apologize on the first episode of the last season of her show. She said, among other things, "I learned that things happened here that never should have happened. I take responsibility for what happens at my show. We have had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks. We have made the necessary changes, and today we are starting a new chapter." Earlier in this presentation, we talked about staged apologies and how oftentimes celebrities make them just to appease the public. I personally felt that this was very staged and very scripted. I did not feel that it was genuine at all. And I just kind of felt like she was apologizing because she had to apologize, not because she actually meant it.
Oh boy, welcome to season 18 of the Ellen DeGeneres Show. If you're watching because you love me, thank you. If you're watching because you don't love me, welcome. How was everybody's summer? Good? Yeah? Mine was great. Super terrific. I'm so happy to be back in the studio. There are a lot of things I want to talk about. I've been looking forward to addressing it all directly, and unfortunately, talking directly to people has been illegal for 6 months, so I have a virtual audience here instead. Here you all are. You look beautiful, and I'm sure you smell great. That's what I'm imagining anyway. All right, let's get to it. As you may have heard, this summer there were allegations of a toxic work environment at our show. And then there was an investigation. I learned that things happened here that never should have happened. I take that very seriously, and I want to say I am so sorry to the people who were affected. I know that I'm in a position of privilege and power, and I realize that with that comes responsibility, and I take responsibility for what happens at my show. This is the Ellen DeGeneres Show. I am Ellen DeGeneres. My name is there. My name is there. My name is on underwear. We have had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks about the show, our workplace, and what we want for the future. We have made the necessary changes, and today we are starting a new chapter. There were also articles in the press and on social media that said that I am not who I appear to be on TV because I became known as the Be Kind Lady. And here's how that happened. I started saying be kind to one another after a young man named Tyler Clemente took his own life after being bullied for being gay. I thought the world needed more kindness, and it was a reminder that we all needed that, and I think we need it more than ever right now. Being known as the Be Kind Lady is a tricky position to be in. So let me give you some advice out there. If anybody's thinking of changing their title or giving yourself a nickname, do not go with the Be Kind Lady. Don't do it. The truth is, I am that person that you see on TV. I am also a lot of other things. Sometimes I get sad, I get mad, I get anxious, I get frustrated, I get impatient, and I am working on all of that. I am a work in progress, and I am especially working on the impatience thing and it's not going well because it's not happening fast enough, I will tell you that.
Throughout the whole thing, she was kind of making jokes. I know that it's like a comedy TV show, but I at least feel that you could take 5 minutes out of comedy and apologize for something very serious that happened on your show. She also addressed her image as the Be Kind Lady and how she has other emotions besides kind and that she is a human being too. I just kind of felt like throwing that in there made it seem like she was just pushing off the responsibility of this being her show. Overall, I just felt that it was a very ingenuine apology that was very inadequate. She still faced backlash after the apology, and it just shows how even though you necessarily didn't do it, you can still be punished for the actions of others and the culture at your workplace. That leads us into how does this relate to business ethics? Obviously, you should always be aware of work culture. We've talked about this before in class, and how you should just, if you're aware, then you can do something about it and you won't be blamed in the future, how Ellen was. Next, there was a lack of real trust. The show was preaching kindness and they didn't even reach that bar themselves. So that was a violation of their real trust. And finally, hard trust. We learned in class that public opinion is a part of hard trust, not necessarily just the rules. So by violating the public's ideas of what should happen at filming, they violated the hard trust that was set by the public. I'm now going to pass it off to Keely so that she can wrap it up for us.